Hey guys, in this video I'm going to explain how much information is available about you simply because something is allowed in the US. Big companies want to know the most they can about you so they can figure out how to advertise to you correctly. And I'll make this clear in a simple way. Do you advertise to males the same way you advertise to females? Not necessarily, right? You could, it depends on what you're selling. But you might want to refine your pitch depending on whether you're going to be talking to a man or a woman. Here's another one. And again, think about how these things impact you in your business because everyone's different. Would you advertise to a married couple the same way you advertise to single individuals? Say I'm talking to the spouse of somebody about what they can do, they can buy into or get. And they have to say something like, yeah, but I need to check with my spouse, right? Okay, my pitch for them may be a little different because I'm preparing for that. I'm used to it. But if they're individual, right? If they're the only person, that really helps, right? If they're single instead of married, then I realize I'm talking to the only decision maker here. Now, say we're talking about something that may or may not impact the kids. Is it helpful if I start discussing how good it is for kids? What if they don't have any kids or there isn't the presence of children in their household? Maybe that affects the discussion, okay? What else can affect the discussion? Well, let's say you have different items available for sale. Some are cheap, some are expensive. Wouldn't it help if you had a sense of whether the person has more money or less money? They have more or less net worth. That's one point that really matters, especially for real estate agents trying to help people in and out of homes of equal or better caliber, right? Most people don't try to step down. They try to step up unless they're older. Sometimes they try to step down on purpose because they're older. And so it's good to know this stuff about people before you contact them somehow, whether you email them, call them, aim to just drop a voicemail, or whether you're going to use their email for lookalike campaigns and not even contact them at all, or if you actually would send a brochure in the mail, okay? All those cases are different, but everybody can make use of the information for sure. So here, let me just nutshell it because I don't want this video to get too long. I just want to be clear. How do you understand about people? And how do they understand, how is this national database? By the way, it has information on about 250 million people in the US. No one outside the US. This is only in the US. It's totally legal in the US to do business this way because you're not an individual. You are a consumer and your job is to be advertised to. And the US makes it easy to figure out enough about you and what you're interested in right now for any advertiser in America to make use of that information. See, the big companies wanted to do it all for themselves. They wanted that information. They wanted to make that work, which they can. But they don't have the legal right to do it unless everyone has the legal right to access that information. We know that. So we tapped right into it and we make that information work on your behalf. Okay? We're not contacting your prospects. Nobody's doing that. We're providing you the information really, really fast. When somebody approaches your website and they land on any of your pages, we tell you who they are. We tell you a lot about them. And then you can decide how to interact with them because you're going to have their email and or phone number and or street address. So you can decide how you want to interact. Or you'll just put their stuff into a lookalike campaign at Facebook, or you'll sell the leads, or you'll share the leads, like with your downline or your franchisees or your partners or your sales team, whatever fits in your case. Okay? The emails could go into your newsletter campaign and just starts dripping on them to get them to get used to you and come back and want to buy something, and then they like it and then they want to buy more. Okay? Anyway, if I go to Airbnb, say I do it on my desktop at home and I sign up and I use my email address and the password and I start putting stuff in there. Airbnb starts to figure out something about me. I've got to kind of verify myself. So I'm going to tell them who I am, my address, city, state, zip, phone number, stuff like that, right? Well, they are going to sell that information or place that information. They don't necessarily need to sell it into the national database, which, by the way, updates with like 100 million data points a day, right? The idea is to stay current when people's IP addresses change, when they buy a new phone, do any number of other things when they move. Okay, so we want to stay consistent so that we can paint the picture properly. Okay, now I did this on Airbnb, right? But guess what? Say then I go to Facebook later and on my cell phone, not my desktop like I did with Airbnb, but my cell phone, I pull it out and I sign in or I create an account or whatever. But guess what? It's the same email address. What do we know? We know I'm interested in Airbnb. We know my address and phone and information from Airbnb. And we also know that my desktop IP and my cell phone IP, because they're both tied to the email address. Okay, let's keep studying, right? And so this information builds up. And that's what I mean. There are all these data points that are maintained and updated and built over the course of time. So let me give you just one quick journey and see how much we can understand about the guy at a glance. Say somebody comes to a plumber. Say they've got this code snippet on their site. They know the moment I came to this plumber, within probably a minute, probably seconds, somebody on their sales team probably has my name, my address, my phone number, my email address, and a bunch of other information about me. Because that is considered white pages stuff today. Your education level is white pages stuff. It's publicly accessible information. So your net worth, same thing now. Your average annual income, same thing now. People are allowed to guesstimate where you stand based on your activities. And so the profiles are not considered exact. They're not supposed to be. They're just high degree of confidence about who you are. Okay. So you might think yourself, like say this information was sold into the database. You might think, okay, this guy himself is doing it. So either I own the apartment complex that I'm looking for him for, or if I landed on one of his residential pages instead of commercial pages, oh, maybe I have my own house or my own condo. It's not the apartment's responsibility to deal with my plumbing. Okay, that gives some data points like, is he in an apartment or a home, right? If my address didn't give it away before, it's still kind of open-ended, but that's my point. Data is being congregated and refined over days. Now, say I got done doing this and then I happen to go to, a roofing company. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so plumbing and roofing. So within some handful of days or a week or something, now I'm looking for this. It's like, oh, okay. Then which link was I clicking on, right? Don't we want to know if I'm looking for hardwood decking or gutters? So it's important to track what I'm looking at, the actual page. And especially if the page tracks back to a certain search, like a Google search that led right to it. Okay? That stuff's important, right? Then what if you find within days of roofing, I'm looking at house painting, right? Oh, wow. So roofing and house painting. And then again, it's important to see what I'm clicking on. Right? Interior, exterior, what? Then what? Say I'm looking at carpet cleaning or carpet installation. Oh, interesting. So we got roof painting carpets, right? Wow, that's painting a bigger picture along with the plumbing. And then what? Oh, landscaping. About the time that somebody clicks on some landscaping site, here's how fast it goes. Say you're this landscaper, I don't know who they are, and I'm just going to click it. If you have our magic snippet on your site, I'll never know that personally staring at the pages, but there is a strong chance, like a 70% chance, that those guys, Green Spaces Landscaping, were just now notified, right now, that I've landed on their site, or within the next minute, that I'm here. Okay, whether I landed on their main page or some specific page, outdoor kitchens and grilling stations, okay, then they would know within a minute if they have our magic snippet, 70% chance they know who I am, okay? And they will think about how to work on nurturing that relationship with me. And everyone's different, so they're going to have their own approaches, all right? Now, another sense of how we understand people. Oh, in the market for puppies. Well, that brings us back to this. Are there children in the house? Well, what if somebody every once in a while, every day or two, on my mobile phone, my cell phone, is looking at kids' cartoons, SpongeBob and stuff? What's that mean? probably kids, and that's my babysitter for the moment. I just, yeah, hey, do that because I have to do this. So the kid's on the phone, and I'm up here making a call or whatever, and that happens every couple of days. What's that tell you? Presence of kids in the house. That's interesting. Okay, so I'm probably the caregiver, right? I'm very possibly the dad of whatever the kid is, or the mom, in the case of a female. But there you go. So let's keep going. What if I'm looking at buying cataract eye drops? Either I have very bad diabetes or I'm getting older, right? And that's interesting to note too, right? Very possible, especially if, hey, you land on Amazon. You can bet Amazon also caters to the information for the exact same reason. They are in the game. Don't blame the player, no matter big or small or whatever. Blame the game, except that that's the beauty of being in America today, is that this information's available. And before you think, wow, invasion of privacy, the idea is, no, it's not. You know what the biggest invasion of privacy you could ever imagine was? White pages in the 70s. You could actually know someone's name and look them up alphabetically by their last name and figure out their actual address. I mean, you could drive up to their house and you could stomp the flowers in their garden. I mean, that was the biggest invasion of privacy. You could just call them 20 times a day. What do you think kids at school did when they had a girlfriend that they just couldn't help tease? They kept prank calling them, right? That is the biggest invasion of privacy. All the rest of this stuff is smaller, So anyway, just letting you know that as a business guy, you need to take advantage of this, and it gives you a huge, huge advantage over your competition. So what if I notice also that this person who seems to be older, but presence of kids, could be grandkids, or just I am still the guardian because who knows what happened to the kids. Hey, I'm here looking at art auctions for big time art, expensive art. Okay, and the pages I'm clicking on are within a range of cost, right? Range of cost. So I'm looking at art somewhere in the tens of thousands, not necessarily the hundreds, but the tens, okay? And cataract eye drops, and maybe diabetic pills. All these data points that are sold just helps build the story about who I am. And does that mean that you're really well known? In a way, except it's lost in the anonymity of the sea of all the millions, tens, hundreds actually, of millions of people in the US. If I said, here's a list of 250 million people in the US and tons of data points about them. Male, female, 40s, 50s, 60s, they're richer, they're poor, they live in all these different zip codes. Some of them have been at the residence a year, some have been at the residence 16 years. Some have college degrees, some have graduate degrees, some have vocational school degrees, some are just high school, some are some college, right? If I give you all this information, you don't know what to do with it. It's just all the people. Here's the people, like the white pages of today. Here are all these people. How are you going to engage them? Well, if you try to spam them, that's spam, right? Nobody does that. The point is, when somebody lands on your site, that is the moment where they are interested in what you offer. And so we grab as much as we can about who that person is, so that when you decide how you want to reach out to them, you have a clue who you're aiming to talk to, a male or a female. In their 20s, you'll talk very differently to them than if they're in their 50s or 60s. What if they're a graduate school? What if they have a graduate school degree? Very different way of talking to them than if they graduated a vocational school or just high school. Very different worlds, right? What if their net worth, annual income, you're looking at somebody who's making like 60 grand a year, okay? Very different than somebody you're looking at them and their house is worth, 500,000, okay? You always can figure out the pitch better if you're going right in the right direction instead of hedging on the phone, trying to feel around and guesstimate where the budget should be and what somebody should be interested in. And you got to ask all these embarrassing questions in the least embarrassing way. Isn't it better if you just already have a sixth sense of which direction you're going with the pitch and they're already feeling like the pitch is built for them? Okay? Just knowing the data points. That's the idea. Okay, so the point of this video is to clarify there's a national database that holds most of the adults, kids, teenagers in the US, everyone from like 18 all the way through 68. And it tells you lots of information about these people. And it's updated at the point of like 100 million data updates a day. Pretty much everybody is updated today. Now, we can't change it, stop it, or anything, but I will say this. More and more competitors are learning that this exists. And if you are not using it, you are falling behind. Your ROI cannot be as good as the people who make use of this information. Your pitch cannot be as good as the people who make use of this information. Your Facebook campaigns cannot make as much as the people who make use of this information. Okay? That's what this video conveys. The fact that this information exists and it's always updated. Some of your competitors know about it. You probably didn't. And if you plug into this information now, you will start to get the access because you have the legal right as an American to have the same access that these multi-billion-dollar companies have that they've always used and didn't want you to know anything about, except legally they can't stop you. You have exactly the same right to get in and get this kind of information nice and cheap. And it's cheaper than most of your ads are costing you. And I'll explain that in a different training video. All right, there you go. I think you understand what's available. So we'll continue talking about how to use it and so on.